Hello everyone, I'm here with Nathan Fowkes. Nathan, welcome. Nathan is a veteran entertainment industry artist with credits on 11 animated feature films, including The Prince of Egypt, Spirit, The Shrek Universe, How to Train Your Dragon, The Legend of Puss in Boots, and Rio 2. He is also well known for his expertise on theatrical color, light, and design. Additionally, Nathan consults for game design studios to enhance the quality of their theatrical presentation. He has worked with numerous clients including Blizzard Entertainment, Infinity Ward, Disney Interactive, Riot Games, King, Ubisoft, and Rovio. Nathan Fowkes is a graduate of Art Center College of Design and frequently teaches at Art Center. Nathan, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Let's start off with something that you're really one of the great experts in, and that is showing the ways that color is so important to storytelling. How does color tell the story?
That's my question, Mark. Thank you for starting with that. And what I have to do, let me put it in a little bit of a context because I'll have to get over my temptation to turn it into an impromptu art lesson. You know, I had an experience on one of the shows I was working on where we were working towards the big look of picture presentation, pitching it to the studio, not to the audience, but to the studio, saying, here's the look, here's the story, please fund this movie. And the production manager came into my office. I had 2 weeks to do a big key painting. That's a rare luxury to work for 2 weeks on one scene. And the production manager said, you know, Nathan, the head of the studio has to go to Europe next week. We've had to bump up our meeting to this Friday. Can you finish? Wow. And my response was, sure, I can finish. And what'll happen when the studio head shows up, he'll trip and fall when he gets out of his car because he'll trip over me face down in the parking lot because I did 3 all-nighters in a row to make this happen. That's what you're asking me. Right. But the solution was exactly what your question is. When you understand the basics of color and connecting with your audience through color design, I was able to simplify. I was able to choose a color palette that lend itself to the emotion of that particular story moment, and then just simplify the secondary areas and use color and light to give a nice contrast to what was most important in that scene. And boom, we had a scene that we put up and the meeting went well. It's one of those where the head of the studio puts their thumb out like the emperor, and it's either yes, we have a movie, or no, we don't. Right. And I can't say that it revolved around my painting. Team effort, lots of work was shown, but we made the movie.
You know, you bring up a subject that's also, I think, very important to our audience this summer, and that is how a concept artist like yourself really persuades the director or the head of the studio to go with your ideas. So you're showing a number of different possibilities in some cases. How do you persuade the people that you're working for that this is the look of the film?
That was I had big missteps early in my career in that regard because I didn't realize that how much you have to sell your own work within the studio, not just to the outside audience. Right. And so what I realized, even though I'm a concept designer who deals quite a bit with environments and the look of the place, I learned the importance of character. Put a character in your scene, give that character the pose, the expression, make sure in nearly every piece one does, the audience, the director, whoever you're pitching to, feels like there's an emotion and a story happening. Even if you're rendering a tree, give that tree a sense of character so a story's happening.
Interesting. So give us a couple examples from the films you've worked on where you have a character that has that emotional tug, that emotional connection to the audience. What are your favorite examples of that?
Well, here's a very small thing, but it's why I love the simplicity of color so much. We were working on Sinbad Legend of the Seven Seas, and I was color keen, and that's where you're doing color roughs to work out the lighting and the color look of each sequence of the film. And so I was color keen a particular sequence where there's chaos happening, lots of busyness. And we sat down, the art director and I sat down to brainstorm, and I have to give credit to the art director for the idea. He said, Sinbad, he's wearing red, and we've got all this confusion. If we push our environment, they were in an interior, if we push our environment, give it kind of a greenish hue, Sinbad is always his red is going to pop out of that green environment, and the audience is always going to unconsciously feel, despite the chaos, that he's the center of events. And that's just a little color touch that we try and do throughout a project to make sure the audience is always with us.
So I have to ask this too. You talk about color in relationship to emotion. So you're really appealing to something that's innate,
Yes.
that's deep inside. But on the other hand, do different cultures treat or respond to colors differently, or is that something that is purely human and the same across the world?
Yes, they do respond differently, and I rarely have to deal with that. I'm not an expert on that particular subject, but one of the core ideas we talk about in the classes and workshops that we do, we talk about the core human principle, unity with variety, where we love things that feel like they fit together. Makes sense. But that can get boring real fast. It needs a little variety, a little bit of surprise. And that's a human quality. It doesn't matter what culture you're in. So we try and design color that has that quality. And in the media age, we've all, no matter what culture you're from, if you have a TV set, you've seen the same movies and TV shows. We do have that common media.
More and more, I think.
Yes.
So you've already talked a little bit about working in teams, creative directors, collaboration. I know that's very important to you. What makes a great collaborative creative team? What are the qualities that either make them really shine or in other cases not so successful?
Excellent question. Yeah. All projects are different. All projects have their successes and failures. It comes down to specialization, and it comes down to the personality of the artist, because we've had artists who were extraordinary, but they didn't have the personality. They were maybe a lone wolf and did great personal work out of their home studio, but weren't of the personality type to be a collaborator for that particular project. So it's your specialization, and it's your ability to work with the team and be part of it. But I come back to that thought over and over because we love the idea of the lone genius in their studio coming up with the big answers. But those people exist, but they're very rare. The rest of us build on the tradition that's been since the dawn of time. It doesn't matter if you're a genius, you come across a saber-toothed tiger, you're down in 3 seconds. But if you're part of a team of humans, highly skilled, highly specialized, you come across the same saber-toothed tiger, the tables are completely turned. That saber-toothed tiger's down in 3 seconds. It never had a chance. That's how you put a man on the moon. That's how you make an animated movie. Human beings succeed because of collaboration.
I think that's probably why we outlive the saber-toothed tiger in the end of the day. But you also are working alone at times. And so I want to get a sense of your own personal creative process, your methodology. How does it begin? You're given a script, you're given an idea. How do you move from the idea to the final visualization of your work?
It does start with the script, and usually a script is just a treatment, a 10-page overview. They hand that to the art department, we read through it, we identify who the characters are and what the locations are, and then we start sketching. I wish I could come up with really grand scenes and just go straight to it. What I have to do, I do little tiny black and white thumbnails, and I mean like I get out my sketchbook, maybe 1.5 inches by 3 inches, just little panels of thumbnails. And if I do 5, 10, 20 of them, one of them's going to pop out and say, oh, there's a kernel of an idea to that one. Then I'll add a little color to it, maybe just kind of warm and cool. And then I'll add detail to it, maybe bring it into Photoshop and start painting into it. And if I have a kernel of an idea, I feel like I can build on it ultimately to a finish.
So you're sketching with your hand. This is not a computer-aided design. This is really just traditional, old-fashioned sketching.
In the beginning.
Yeah, and that sounds like the way you described it is a way of thinking.
Yes.
In other words, you're thinking with your hand in that process.
Yes.
So when you get inspired and something happens during that process, you get an idea. Where does it come from? Is it internal? Is it something you've seen? Is it something in nature? What are the sources of your inspiration?
It's all of those things, but in the end, none of those things matter unless you have the mileage behind it. I've always been someone, I don't claim any particular talent, but I've always loved the idea of being an artist and desperately wanted it. So I say that my own key personal quality is desperation. It's absolutely true. I've been, the late nights over and over, all the sketches, the thumbnails, trying to figure these things out. And so, you do day after day, week after week, month after month, decade after decade, you build up a little bit of, kind of that muscle memory, procedural memory, where all of those ideas, they're there and they can come out.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that mileage that has made the difference.
And the way you describe that process, that learning that muscle memory, I hear current students at Art Center talking about having to do that over and over again. They demand that the teachers give them. Was that your experience at Art Center when you were here in the 1990s?
Yeah, I always, Art Center was the right place for me because it had that attitude. The attitude was, you can have a lot of fun at Art Center, but it's not a party school. You're here, you're in or you're out. You come in, you hit the ground running, and we're here to succeed, to get out there and do something. And so Art Center just has that intensive vibe that you're going to do something.
Yeah.
And so that was the experience I had, and it was definitely the right experience.
Right. And a real great professional preparation. A lot of people say that. So we talked about this a little bit, but today concept designers rely on all kinds of software.
Yep.
You were trained as a traditional painter.
Yep.
So what are the differences between those two media? Are there advantages to having been trained in the analog world of real painting? What will happen, do you think, to a generation in the future that only does software concept design? What are your thoughts on this big subject?
So concept designers today, I think they consistently recognize the value of getting out and painting, going outside, sketching, drawing, going to the life drawing classes. When I moved to Los Angeles, there was one life drawing atelier that I was aware of. And now, because of the entertainment industry, there's dozens of them. And it's ironic that in the digital age, there's more and more life drawing. But these students recognize they've got to understand light, they've got to understand form to be able to do that. And so I think no matter how far into the future and how far into technology we get, the value of that will stand. And if you don't mind, Mark, if I can throw in something that really made that point for me, at DreamWorks, after the movie Avatar came out, the cutting-edge technological movie of its time,
sure.
DreamWorks invited James Cameron to come and give a presentation about how they use cutting-edge technology to make this happen. DreamWorks has always wanted to combine artistry and technology. And so James Cameron came and gave this presentation. It was a good presentation, but he said one thing that I very much appreciated. He said, when I started in visual effects back in the 1960s, 1970s, he said we were doing things like scratching effects into film stock,
Wow.
And he said every skill that I have ever had, every technique I've ever used is today 100% obsolete, except for one, and that is the pencil.
Right.
James Cameron, if you look at the art of books, he draws surprisingly well. He draws quite well. And he said, I need a team of artists who can sit down, sketch out ideas, put them up on the wall, and for us to make decisions. I can't wait for a render to be made and then loaded and then the turntable on the computer and then there's a technical problem. No, we've got to get in, we've got to sketch, we've got to conceptualize.
Right. It sounds like your own creative process when you start with that sketching component. So on from a professional angle, what is your advice to young concept artists that are just getting into the business? You've talked about the importance of maintaining your sketching, drawing skills, but more in terms of how do you get started? How do you get that first job? How do you begin to establish a reputation?
It's exactly that. It's kind of a continuation of the last question, because on my most recent project, there was an artist portfolio event. Hopeful artists were putting their portfolios out there. And the project I was working on, the production designer we were looking for someone to join us, like a really good up-and-comer. And he went to that presentation. He came back the next day and I asked him, how did it go? Did you find anyone you liked? And he said, no. He said, I must have looked at 30 portfolios or more, and I didn't see a single portfolio I was excited about. I was surprised. This is LA, there's good people out there. And I said, my gosh, what was the problem? And he said, every single portfolio I looked at felt like the artist was trying to do a technique and a style, and not one of them was trying to tell me a story or create an emotion. So my advice is, you've got to have technique. You've got to understand the tools. You have to be an expert at the tools. But you can't put that cart before the horse. It has to be driven by visual storytelling, really reaching out and connecting with your audience at that gut emotional level where art lives.
Can you tell us about your first breakthrough? What was the moment when you said, I think I'm going to be a professional concept designer. When did that first occur to you? What was the first great job that you had?
I credit my mentor, the artist Paula Sane, who's just too good to be true. I got out of Art Center. I got a job. I got a good job in theme park show design, doing kind of splashy renderings that were meant to sell people on a project. You know, it's going to be fun. It's going to be great. This is pre-digital, kind of gouache renderings. And so I was a painter and trying my best to do exciting images. And I got an invitation to show my portfolio at DreamWorks. They were just ramping up. They were going to do the show The Prince of Egypt. And there was one particular artist there by the name of Paula Sane. And he already had work done and up on the walls. And this work was extraordinary. It was epic. The color, the lighting, the compositions. And I saw that stuff. And I already had a good job. And I hadn't specifically planned to go into animation. So I went with, well, why not? Why not go visit DreamWorks? I walked out of there saying, I have to work on this project. And so I kind of, over-pitched myself to Paul and convinced him that I had the enthusiasm to be a part of it. And I was at DreamWorks for 15 great years.
Yeah, very fortunate start, to be sure.
Yes.
So this summer you're teaching the workshop in Beijing. Tell us a little bit about the workshop itself and what you think your students will benefit from.
So it's back to that idea of connecting with the audience. You know, we have the opportunity, and this is why I get so excited about what we do. We get to light up the darkness as artists. We get to go into the dark movie theater and have that screen come on, go into the game room and have the visuals come on and play the game. We get to be the people who contribute to creating that look. And it's all about reaching out and connecting with your intended audience. So that's going to be the focus. How to use visual design, visual storytelling tools, everything we need to be able to connect visually with our intended audience.
And the students will come out with real portfolio pieces. This will be something they can share and show to studios.
Absolutely.
Filmmakers.
We'll have we'll have lessons, we'll have critiques, but we'll also be building a couple of pieces over the course of the week.
Great. Fascinating. Well, we're really looking forward to seeing you in Beijing, and it sounds like a wonderful workshop. Nathan, thank you very much.
I'm excited. Thanks,
Thank
Mark.
you.